Chapter 5. In spite of human opinion. You cannot have read this far without realizing that true healing is spiritual. Indeed, you would not have chosen to read this book at all had you not been a searcher after truth. Again, if your bent is toward logic, toward order and arrangement, you will find the identification and discussion of the 5 steps in treatment valuable. In this, as any other learning, the beginner may be largely dependent upon his grasp of techniques, his understanding of mechanics, and his experience in seeing a process as a whole. As he progresses, he often finds that he is able to cut through a long process and achieve the same or more perfect results. Many experienced drivers, excellent as they may be, find that they have forgotten even the names of the parts of the driving machinery that they handle so skillfully. There is no one essential pattern for healing. Spiritual understanding is developed by many media, by many routes. The only thing important is that its development be continuous. By their fruits ye shall know them, said Jesus. You may have by this time evolved a pattern of thought that is effective in spite of barriers, blockades, barricades, stumbling blocks, obstacles, snags, curbs, and dampers. Or you may have developed a faith, even so small as a grain of mustard seed, that will, according to St. Luke, cause a sycamore tree to obey you if you say, Be thou plucked up by the root, and be thou planted in the sea. Or which will, according to St. Matthew, remove a mountain at your command. Of course, all bottlenecks are broken and healing is instantaneous if, despite external evidence, internal disease, and the sympathetic but adverse thought of those around one, he becomes conscious for a moment of his identity as a living spirit. In this case, time is not a factor. It serves in its true place as the everlasting now. This happy individual need read no further. He has become freed from the necessity of formal or pattern thinking. His spiritual intuition has been developed until it has become the mainspring of his life and living. But for most of us, the search is an education process. For those who wish to receive the basic understanding on which spiritual healing is based, here is a brief catechism of 8 questions and answers. Spiritual healing. 1. How does one receive spiritual healing? Spiritual healing is based upon the truth that every person is essentially perfect. In spite of all diseased appearances to the contrary, man is pure spirit. This spirit was never born, never gets sick, and never dies. 2. What then needs to be healed? Nothing but the belief. 3. How does this healing affect the body? It permits a flow of life, unhampered by any discordant thought, mental reflex, inhibition, obstruction, pain, or limitation. 4. What law does the spiritual therapist employ? The law of cause and effect. 5. How does this law work? Through it, form is created by the image or idea. 6. What are the requirements of spiritual healing? That the one using the principle rise above the images and ideas that produce the disease. No matter what the condition may be, the sick man must see himself as one with living spirit. He must contemplate the perfect life now flowing through him and have absolute faith that it will instantly respond to him. 7. How do we remove the mental cause of disease? By bringing in the new concept of truth and dwelling upon it until the old concept has been dissolved. Let Christ, the perfect concept, be formed in you. That is, hold it until it forms in you a consciousness of itself. Always start with the premise: perfect man, perfect God, and perfect being. First, you find the mental cause that needs to be changed. Then you reverse it by bringing in the new and higher concept that transcends the lower. In other words, you convince your mind that this negative condition need not be. If creative power within us is continually remolding our bodies, to live and think of the affirmative and constructive side of life will bring out the perfection which we desire. 8. Is there a scriptural pattern for meeting the bottlenecks in human experience? Yes, it is found in Proverbs 3:5-6. Rely with all your heart on the Eternal, and never lean on your own insight. Have mind of Him wherever you may go, and He will clear the road for you. When things get too thick for you, put your whole trust in God. Rely on the Eternal with all your heart. Take the initial step, and Spirit will go before you and make clear, easy, and successful your way. Like a massive bulldozer, he will clear all the difficulties and obstacles for you. Treatment for healing. The process begins with your desire or recognition. If you know that the very presence of your longing, your wish, your ambition, or your awareness of a better or different way of living is certain proof that the condition or change you desire has at the moment a spiritual experience, your part in bringing it into reality on the physical plane will be greatly shortened. Sharpen the outline of your desire to make a definite image or concept. Bring it out of a vague, nebulous state. Make it assume the proportions of reality. The next step is to hold the picture you have made through meditation and silence until it forms in you a consciousness of itself, an identification. Then speak the word or declare what you desire. Imagine that Christ is actually present with you and speak the words with the authority, feeling, and tone that you think he would use in speaking them for you. This is the decree. Sit quietly for 5 or 10 minutes in what the author calls the period of acceptance or gestation. This is realization. Get very still and center your thought in the presence of Christ. Feel his healing peace and power flowing through every nerve, muscle, organ, and tissue, cleansing, equalizing, and renewing everything unlike itself. Conclude by thanking him for the great healing that has already taken place, and try to hold the power that has been released in you as you go about your other activities. This is the release. Do everything with ease and confidence and deliberation. Know that the treatment continues even after you leave the silence. He that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Creative power continues to work in your behalf even when you are busy with other things. In this case, the treatment is for healing. The pattern unfolded is applicable to any other condition which forms a bottleneck to spiritual growth or demonstration. In spite of bottlenecks, your Red Sea will part to give you a free passage. Your river of Jordan will be cut off. The manna will fall. The oil will be multiplied. The water will turn into wine. The net will be filled with a multitude of fish. The storm will be stilled. The unclean spirit will come out. The fever will leave. The leprosy will depart, and you will be restored. Step 1. Recognition. Start your healing treatment in the silence by saying to yourself with deep feeling, I recognize that God is the only healing power there is, and that it is right here within me now. I recognize that anything unlike God is now dissolved by the fulfillment of my word. I recognize that the subconscious mind or soul can only materialize such images as have been deeply and firmly induced in mind, and that the new concept is the law unto my desire. I recognize that there is no obstruction to the operation of this new concept which I am now holding in my mind. I recognize that my body is carried in my mind as an idea which outpictures my mental attitude. I recognize that a change of consciousness will result in a change of my body if my consciousness has been holding an image of disease in my body. A change of consciousness will automatically wipe out that disease. I recognize that God responds to me by corresponding to my state of thought. I enter into his life perfection and wholeness in such a degree as I comprehend it. I recognize that behind, in, and through all disease there is an infinite power and intelligence that restores, cleanses, and makes whole. I recognize that there is perfect self at the center of my being, which has never been touched by affliction or disease, and that I can call it forth through my recognition. To be aware of this perfect self is to be saved from whatever I need to be saved from. I recognize that disease is not reality, and that it has no law to support it. In my spiritual body I am now, always, and have been, and always will be whole and well. I recognize that my perfection and health and wholeness are merely hidden from me by my false beliefs, and that the only thing that has to be healed is my belief. Step 2. Identification. Since God is all life, my life is some part of God life. There, being only life, I must be identified and unified with this life. Where? In the subjective part of my mind, how do I identify myself with this life? How do I employ the energy and vitality of God so that it flows through my body temple as vibrant and perfect health, through awareness? To the degree that I become conscious of and feel the presence of divine life, does it become an active force in my body. I therefore make my decree with acceptance and faith, knowing that the law responds to me by corresponding to my word. The healing power of Christ is now active in me, and I am made whole. I now identify myself with God's power, which heals everything in my body that needs healing and brings forth the highest state of perfection within me. The kingdom of God is a wellspring within me, and I'm alive with radiant health. Identifying myself with the kingdom within me, I have access to the full power and glory of God. I am renewed, revitalized, restored, strengthened, and made victorious. The divine plan of bodily action is now at work within me. I identify myself with the divine plan which interprets itself to me through strength, power, and buoyant health. Every cell, organ, and function of my body responds to the divine energy now flowing through me. I identify myself with this divine energy which flows through me in every widening circle of healing. The less becomes more, the isolation becomes inclusion, and the separation becomes oneness. The abnormal becomes normal, wrong action becomes right action. The quickening, vitalizing power of Spirit floods my whole being, and I am radiant, vital, and alive. Identifying myself with the all-providing power within me maintains, sustains, recreates, keeps my body in perfect, renewing order. God's law of balance keeps heartbeat true, blood pure, and every function perfect and harmonious. As a temple of Spirit, my body is made of divine substance. Identifying myself with the temple, not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. I realize that my body is no longer subject to physical and material laws. It is governed entirely by spiritual law. I am one with the life of God. My body is fashioned after the likeness of the divine pattern. Identifying myself with the life and energy of God dissolves all pain and discord. My whole being manifests the ease, harmony, peace, and strength of the Spirit which indwells me. The life of God now fills my body temple, and I am healed and made whole. Identifying myself with the one substance out of which everything is made, I call it an activity through my word. Speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. As I speak the word of healing, divine substance is released throughout my being. My body now objectifies the God idea which is forever perfect. Step 3. The decree. Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee. To decree means to involve a word in thought or to set a word in motion. This does not necessarily mean a word formed by sound or letters. It may be a wordless mental concept. To decree or declare means to form, to make clear. A word begins with a matrix or mold in mind. It becomes flesh or takes form through spiritual substance. To speak the word is to decree that your concept shall be made flesh. What is the new concept that you wish to substitute for the old concept of disease? By accepting the new, you nullify the old. As an illustration, let's use this one. The quickening, vitalizing power of Spirit right now is renewing me and restoring me to perfect health. This is your intention. We shall refer to it as well as to the other affirmations as the Word. All affirmations converge in the Word. The Word is all the declaration of truth and concentration, working through subjective law. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that whereunto it is sent. Step 4. Realization. The worlds in which I live are two. The world I am, and the world I do. Henry Van Dyke. As we approach the next step, it might be well to define the word realization. It is from an old Sanskrit word which means from thought to thing. Realization is thus a subjective process which leads from the unseen to the seen, from decree to fulfillment, from thought to thing. It is a dual process which begins with a thought, the concept of the thing wanted, and then acts to materialize the object embodied in the thought. True realization is based upon this twofold process. Failure to carry this process into action means a partial result or no result at all. In the truest sense, realization means the same thing in actualization. It is, so to speak, mind in precipitation, the Word becoming flesh. the idea taking form. It is imperative, however, that the decree, prayer, or treatment be followed by the action. Jesus said, faith without works, prayer without action is dead. Complete realization is both choice and acceptance. It is convincing the inner mind that what we say is true. The principal work in realization is to keep the body and mind relaxed and clear of tension, strain, confusion, contradictions, doubts, and anxieties. The object is to keep the healing life of God flowing from the center of the being to the afflicted parts of the body, and to know that it is manifesting itself in all that we think, say, and do. We must not only declare the truth about our bodies, but we must act and feel the truth of what we say. We must think and live in such a way that the right action becomes the law of our being. When we realize that our bodies respond to our word, there will no longer be anything for disease to act with. This realization is true not only of the malady which afflicts us, but of our whole organism. Jesus understood and demonstrated the law of realization so perfectly that he needed only to say to the man sick of palsy, "Arise and walk." Metaphysically interpreted, realization is faith in form and acceptance objectified. The mind formulates an idea representing the fulfillment of some need or desire, and then concentrates all its facilities and forces to make the idea real in the soul and in the outer world. I realize that there is a law in my mind which is now releasing into my body everything necessary to its wholeness and perfection. There is no barrier to the operation of this concept. There is no inaction, overaction, subnormal action, or abnormal action. There is no blockage, frustration, pain, irritation, inflammation, agitation, or contradiction. There is no bitterness, congestion, repulsion, dissension, incompletion, or deflection. There is one perfect circulation flowing through my body. It is never congested, impeded, polluted, or retarded. This circulation is strong, steady, vigorous, and forceful. It automatically dissolves everything that is unlike God. As the sun liquefies the iceberg, so my consciousness of God's presence liquefies all pain and discord. I know that the perfect life of God in and through me now is recreating my body after the divine pattern. Step 5. The release. The final and important step in the process is the release or planting of the word. If the seed is not planted or released, it cannot come to fruition. The word is the cause. Healing is the effect. If the word is properly released within the mentality, there will be a definite answer. The law says that whatsoever man soweth, that shall he reap. The treatment moves from cause to effect in such a degree as our consciousness embodies the idea. Many students, after giving a treatment, say, "Now I shall leave it with God." That is a good practice if you leave it with God, but bad practice if you leave it to Him. The first attitude brings great success in spiritual work. The second, on the other hand, scatters your good. If two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them. In the first attitude, God is working with you. In the second attitude, He is working without you. In leaving it to God, you are dividing your good because you believe in duality. You are implying that God's activity and your activity are two separate activities. In other words, you are separating your activity from God's activity. The Father worketh hitherto, and I work. To leave it to God is not only to break your unity with God by assuming that His activity is something separate from your activity, but to evade your responsibility. In metaphysical language, you are following two powers instead of one, and you are headed for failure. Do you see the difference? When you leave it with God, your contract is maintained, and the work continues. You are with God, and He is with you. As many as are led practice the presence by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. All things work together for good. The choice then is between activating the treatment, giving it continuity, by leaving it with God, and neutralizing it by leaving it to God. I consciously release this word. I release any sense of false responsibility for making it happen. This I do by knowing that it activates the law of God-mind, which can only answer affirmatively to this word of desire, by completely and fully and feeling accepting this word to be the truth about me in general, and this condition in particular. I can release it without strain, doubt, or anxiety. It is not I, but the Father within, he doeth the work. I now rest this case. I thank God for the perfect fulfillment of my desire. Another way to keep your word alive and working in your behalf is to lift up your heart each time the physical condition comes to your attention and say, Father, I thank thee that thou art at work on this claim now. The answer may come immediately or may take a long time, but the important thing is that you keep your courage and mental level high. Metaphysical treatments are cumulative in their effect, and ye know not the hour when the Son of Man cometh. The success of the treatment will depend upon the continuity of your faith and expectancy. Since God is everywhere equally present, he is in every disease. To know this is to realize that the healing has already taken place. I've observed this law at work, and I believe in it. Several years ago, a dear friend fell down a long flight of stone steps and was seriously injured. She was rushed to the hospital where she lay in a coma with a fractured skull and other serious injuries. After 3 specialists in consultation had said the case was hopeless, I was called to the hospital by the member of the family. The night nurse told me that as I entered the room that the patient could not live through the night, that the doctors had given her up. Given her up, I said. What do you mean? There's no hope for her. She will probably die in the night, she responded. Aren't doctors the sworn enemies of death? What right have they to give up on a woman who's still alive, I demanded. There was a strong atmosphere of despair and resignation all through the room, and as I sat beside the patient's bed, I asked the nurse if she would mind leaving the room while I prayed. Not at all, she replied, and stepped quietly out into the hall. This was a crisis. I knew I had to furnish God with a clear and open channel to work through. A great sense of peace filled me as I entered the silence and began to pray for the speedy recovery of the patient. There was no response from her at first. Reaching through the rail of the side of the bed, taking the woman's hand in mine, I said, God, we are not going to let this woman die. She has many useful years ahead of her yet, and we want her to live. We are asking you right now to touch this broken and bruised body, restore her to perfect health and wholeness. We believe that you are releasing the healing power of Jesus Christ in her this instant, and that it is powerful enough to penetrate and dispel every negative and inharmonious condition. So did she live? Of course she lived. Before the prayer was finished, she had regained consciousness. She turned to me saying, Why, Dr. Russell, what are you doing here at this time of night? It was truly a resurrection. On the second day after my visit, she was taken for a drive. Now suppose that I had surrendered patient with fear thoughts and had wrapped her around with a defeatist attitude instead of seeing the radiant life and imperishable power that was hers despite the evidence of the physical senses. I do not have to tell you how different the result would have been. End of chapter.